Welcome once again to Dialogue on Public Issues. I'm John Chowning with Campbellsville University. I'm very pleased today to be hosting two ladies from our local community of Campbellsville, Taylor County, Miss Yvette Haskins and Miss Suzanne Grubesic. I'll let them each introduce themselves in just a moment. They're here to talk about a very exciting and important project. Welcome, ladies. Miss Haskins, just a few words of introduction on your part.
Well, I'm Yvette Haskins. I'm born and raised here in Campbellsville and Taylor County, traveled around and came back and retired here. And currently I'm co-chair of Greater Campbellsville United and an inaugural member as well. And we try to do things that we can to improve and help the unity of our community. And it's been working very well. We're glad to work with such fine people.
Thank you. And Ms. Grubesic, welcome to our show. Both of you have been previously on our show. You returned to Campbellsville a couple of years ago. Tell us about yourself and the organization you represent.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be back, Dr. Chowning. As you said, I have been on your show. What a pleasure that was then. I was the director of the Chamber of Commerce at that time. Today, I am here representing Taylor County Schools. I'm the district grant writer. And happily, we're going to talk about a big grant we've gotten that's going to be really beneficial for our community as a whole, and especially in our current time of racial tensions that we really think we're going to find some reconciliation and healing and education and dialogue.
As you note, this grant and this project is very timely, given our current dynamics across the nation. And I'll go back to you, Suzanne, if I may.
Sure.
Since you wrote the grant, tell us about that project and the grant, how it came about, how it began, and just an overview, and then we'll delve into the project.
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to. Well, my job, of course, is to constantly look, survey, be on the lookout for grants that would be beneficial to the students in our school system or in our community. And I stay busy all year long looking for that. One day, just by divine intervention, we'll call it, a good friend of mine who is actually the director of Greater Campbellsville United. Her name is Wanda Washington. She and I passed paths, and she said, "Hey, I've got a grant, and I was wondering if you'd look at it." And I thought, well, sure, I'll take a look. And at first glance, I thought, what in the world would this have anything to do with me? It was for an organization called 400 Years of African American Heritage. Well, I thought, how can I immediately bring that into something that could be useful for the community and the school? So I put my mind to thinking and talking to Wanda about my thoughts along the way. And the first thing that really came to my mind was a timeline, because that's the best way that I find with my own children to teach history and to teach the significance of things. As you find the timeline, here's where you are in time, here's the things that happened in the past, and it gets a better way of being able to see how close things really are. When we say a date that like 1600, that seems so far ago, but really, if you think of that in just a couple generations back, you know? So I started putting my mind around that and researching, and I came up with the idea that we should showcase, specific to Taylor County, African American history and what it looked like from the first day that an enslaved African was brought here that we have a record of all the way to present day. Now, Dr. Chowning, that was beyond way back in January and February, before anything was happening right now. When I was writing the grant and as I researched and started learning more myself, I started getting more and more excited about how pivotal and important this could be, because I saw all of the deficits in my own knowledge. Growing up, attending school in this town and knowing so little about what life was like for African Americans for all these points of time. And I was flabbergasted that I could be so ignorant. And I thought, this is going to be such a tool. This is going to be such a learning tool for everybody in our community. And as I started to write it, I just got those feelings that you kind of get when you know you're working with the magic. Something was amiss. I was brought into this project for a reason. I didn't know why, but I felt God's hand in it. And I thought, we're going to get this. And then, lo and behold, everything started happening with the Black Lives Matter movement. And then I really thought, oh, we're going to get this. And it's going to be a tool for healing. And sure enough, just in early June, I got the call that sure enough, we had been selected one of 20 entities in the nation. I don't know if any other schools received the award, because this was open to any community organization that was going to celebrate and highlight African American history. But we got it, and the first thing I thought was, now I need some excellent leaders in the community to join up with me to make this happen. And you found Yvette Haskins, which I am thrilled to be on a team with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, thank you for your wonderful work. Excellent grant writing, and we appreciate that excellent work. Now, Yvette, tell us about your role and why you decided to undertake leadership on this project. Obviously, as co-chair of Greater Campbellsville United, you have an interest in this type of issue and commemoration, interpretation, and preservation, and highlighting the history of the African American experience in our community.
Well, needless to say, I did not arrive at this idea alone. I had a lot of prodding from one Mr. John Chowning and others. But it just really struck me that this is something that needs to be told, it needs to be documented, and it needs to be available for our students as well as our community people to learn and understand more about African American history, which was not taught in the schools. And there's so much that, Suzanne, you didn't know, but there's so much that even other African Americans don't know even about their own history. So this is going to be monumental, especially considering the situation and the climate of things nowadays, and especially for our youth. They want to know, they need to know, and not just African American youth and people, but for all of Taylor Countyans and people everywhere just needs to know the history and from whence they come. And if you don't preserve your history, then you can be lost in where you're trying to go.
Yvette, do you think including a part of the painful part of that history, is that important as well, do you think?
It is very much important. It's very much important because children today, grown-ups today, have this idea that it's always been easy. Things have been there for them always, and they don't realize the shoulders that they're standing on and what had to be sacrificed to get to this point. There's so many people that think it's just always been easy. They could always get the education, religion, and worship where they want, when they want. But it's not always been that way. People have been endangered and a lot of lives lost in order for us to be able to live as we live now. And there is still so much more to do and so much more things that need to change for us to continue, because there's no need for us to drop the ball now, because so much has been, been done to get us to this point. So we have to continue.
Suzanne, I think the title of this project is very significant. You use the title, The Journey to Reconciliation, and then I'm paraphrasing the history of the African American experience in Taylor County, something to that effect. But the journey to reconciliation being the key. Explain that and the source of that particular thought and quote.
Yes, I'd be happy to. That was another really, I'll just say, spiritual moment in the creation of this project and how it came to be in my mind and on the paper. As part of research for what to do for this project, I went to a speaking engagement during Black History Month at Campbellsville University, and the speaker that day was Reverend Joseph Owens. I knew nothing about him before and had never heard him speak, but what a gift it was to be in that auditorium that day and hear him. And his words just opened up all my thoughts when he started to speak about that very thing, Dr. Chowning, about the delicate and the painful things that are part of the African American story that people want to shy away from. And it just really resonated. I was like, yes, nobody likes to say that. Everybody, oh, let's all pretend it's okay. And his actual quote that I wrote down and used in the grant was this. I think every time I say it just re-energizes the meaning behind the project. We cannot deny there are divisive things that happened in our history, but the road to reconciliation comes from learning, sharing, and refusing to shy away from the difficult. And that quote there is where the title Journey to Reconciliation came from. I thought this has to be more than just a static timeline. This has to be about telling where they were, moving into where they are today, and where they want to go, where we want to go, which is together and to reconciliation. And you can't be truly reconciled until everyone can see the truth, acknowledge the truth, not shy away from the truth or be guilted by the truth, but acknowledge it, be forgiven, and then reconcile. That's what I hope the project will be a tool for.
With that explanation, Suzanne, very eloquent and moving explanation of the title about the journey to reconciliation, I wanted to move then into the project itself. And you very well in your proposal and grant summary divide the history into 4 distinct periods. And I'd like for you to walk us through very quickly the first 2, and then ask Yvette to discuss briefly the second 2 periods of Taylor County's African American experience. Suzanne?
Okay, absolutely. So as you said, I have divided this project up into 4 installments, and they're based around the school calendar, so that every section of time gets equal play while the children are in school, because I'm not sure if we've highlighted that enough, but the installation will be housed in the high school library, and also we will work with Campbellsville school system as well, so that this can truly be a cross-community event. So there might be an installation in Taylor County, one section, the next installation may be in Campbellsville. That way we hopefully can have field trips that go back and forth. It will start with installation 1, the time period being the very first records that we have of African Americans in Taylor County. Thankfully, we have the wonderful resource of the Taylor County Archive Center here, and Betty Jane Gordon and Virginia Graves, who have all of this information so readily available. So we will start there. We have the Heaston House and the slave quarters that is on the property that has a lot of artifacts and memorabilia and even records of actual African Americans that were sold or bought here. We're going to use all of that and new information that we can find, start there in the first installment, go through Civil War life for an African American in Taylor County, and show as much as we can of what that was, so that someone would walk into the school, be able to see that and really get a taste of the difficulty, of the difference of what it was between a white person here in Taylor County and an African American person in Taylor County, and then move the next installation into post-Civil War, which one might think, oh, well, post-Civil War, everything was better. I mean, that's the idea. Well, slavery was over, but the arc of equitable access to education is a key thing to highlight. There were some articles in the paper during Black History Month that really made me aware of this divergence between what was possible and available or lawful for a white person versus a Black person at that time, and to be able to show that so that people can see it factually and understand the difficulties that African Americans faced even post-Civil War, and to dig into the role of the church. And the Black churches in the African American community are very pivotal, and they have rich histories all on their own, and to showcase that during that time. And then also the post-Civil War discrimination laws in Taylor County. What did that look like? I'm really hoping to have actual live stories to tell about what it was like to be post-Civil War but pre-civil rights, and what that was like in Taylor County for installation number 2.
Yvette?
Yeah, and installation number 3 is a desegregation and the civil rights movement, of which I lived. So that will be, forefront, and we'll be able to tap into some people that were in the moment that was during that time. And we have little bit more history concerning those things, because they were television by then, and we were able to see the movement around the country, not necessarily here in Taylor County, but it was pretty much akin to that. Fortunately, in Taylor County, I don't think we had the violent issues that were around other counties and other states. But we'll go with the civil rights movement from that time, and then we'll move on into the post-civil rights movement. During the civil rights movement itself, when we were able to have fair housing and being able to have means to jobs and things that were a little bit more professional other than housemaids and things that were, there before. But I think that we'll be able to have some really interesting things for people that lived during that era, and for them to see and know that what they did and what they were doing has been beneficial to the next era, which is the post-civil rights life, and how things have changed, but how they have stayed the same. But we'll speak on the new Black Lives Matter. We'll speak on things that have led up to this, the death of Dr. Martin Luther King and those people, and how it has affected us here in Campbellsville and Taylor County. And community leaders here in Campbellsville and Taylor County that brought us, through that time. Many professionals from our Durham school that, has since been closed, but the students there went on to have productive lives and contributed so much back to the community, and we'll be able to show how they have impacted our lives and things here in Taylor County.
Again, Yvette, why do you think, and I touched on this earlier, but why do you think it's so important? A lot of people dismiss history, period. History, I taught history in high school many, many years ago. And it was sometimes a challenge with some particularly students who were in the mandatory classes that they had to take. But why is the study of African American history so important, and why is this project so important in 2020?
Well, one reason is, like I said before, we need to know our history so that we'll know where we're on our way to. If you can't track your past, then you have no path to the future. So we nowadays the kids and a lot of people think that everything's fine, and on the surface sometimes it is. But here in 2020, we realize, and a lot more people are realizing, other than African Americans, that things have not been equal, and that it's time to reconcile and know that all lives do matter. But Black lives matter because they have been challenged so much. And it seems that no one realizes the value of a Black life and to this point. And but I think we have come to a point now where others appreciate, understand, and are caring about their fellow man. And I think that's what's important now.
Yvette, you and I have had this conversation previously through the years in our work with GCU and here at the university and so forth. But part of the challenge is that those of us who lived through the civil rights movement and experienced and witnessed the passing of the civil rights laws, the fair housing laws, the voting rights laws, there was a presumption that that took care of everything. And it did improve things greatly. And we did make great progress. And then when President Obama was elected, a phenomenal event in and of itself, whether you approve, ideologically were aligned with him or not. It was a great moment for a person of color in a Black American to be in the White House. A great step forward. But there was even talk of a post-racial America at that time. In retrospect, we were mistaken, weren't we? in
Very
terms
much.
of we had made great progress. I'm not dismissing the progress we've made. We have made great progress. You understand that better than I do because you attended segregated schools, and I did too, but from a different perspective than yours. But comment on that, the statement I just made.
Yeah, especially doing the segregated schools. We didn't realize at the time what it was a disadvantage, but also at the same time it was an advantage because the community was involved in the schools. Our students, when they got up to go to school that morning, they saw their parents getting up and going to work and having a job and having responsibility. But now, there's so many people on government assistance and, they're at home and their children kind of sometimes get the idea that we don't have to work, but we still can give a check and get some money and finances. And that's not the American way. That's not the way of African Americans. They've always been used to earning their way with, working and making an honest dollar. And even though it was hard to get, at that time, but there's just so many things that have reared its ugly head recently that have called attention to the things that are going on in the country. And it's for a reason, you can't just cover it over. And once it's come to light, it's what are you going to do now? How are you going to help fix it now? Where will the reconciliation come from now? So going forward, if we don't do something now, then it really tells the story of the American people. Because if you're not willing to stand up for your brothers and sisters of different colors of racial origin, then you are not in the American way, the American mindset. Even with like international people, we're all one. This country was established to be one, and we have to bring everybody. Those that get to the top cannot push the others down. They have to pull them up. And we were just hoping that, and no, we're demanding that from now on things change, and they have to. And the national climate is much more volatile than the local climate. But there are issues and there are things that we as a community need to discuss and talk about and lay groundwork for, in our criminal justice systems, in the state especially, and in our county. And we just need to have a pattern and knowledge of what's going on and how we're going to reconcile, how we're going to get it to some kind of satisfactory.
And
John,
Suzanne, please comment. Yes.
I'd love to say that all the things you're saying, Yvette, and about the dialogue, I think that's the crucial underlying key is the dialogue has to happen. And this project, I'm so hopeful because it will be focused and targeted on school children from 6th grade to 12th grade. Those children haven't been indoctrinated yet into the let's not talk about it. Let's just go about life as is. They're ripe for seeing the information in a new light, being able to talk about it freely, and then be the future leaders that go out and make actual change. They don't just go into systems that are established and follow the leader. They actually say, wait a minute, this could be done differently.
Right.
And I feel like this timeline, hopefully, will become this safe place for open dialogue for people that don't know what they don't know to find out, for the ones that have information to share can lead them along the path towards this reconciliation. I just feel like there's not enough safe spaces there have not been enough safe spaces to have open racial dialogue that is not based in heated emotion but based in fact, and this can be the perfect breeding ground for that.
We're down to about 5 minutes, and we could continue this wonderful dialogue and discussion on very, very important topics. But I want to get to the heart of this project, and we have to an extent. What is the end product of the project? It's been touched on, but I want to be more specific. And then related to that, how can people get involved? Suzanne, discuss the end product and how it will be used, and then Yvette, discuss about how can people get involved in this project, and we have 4 minutes.
Okay, let me just, I'll quickly say the end goal for the project is obviously moving us more toward reconciliation, showing Taylor County as a community that's committed to having these conversations and to healing, if not our nation, at least our community, and being a guiding light for anybody else that wants to follow this model. And ultimately, this project that will be a year-long project will have a permanent footprint in our community that people can come from far around and see what we did, and African Americans, white people can come and travel the timeline as a tourist attraction.
Yvette, how can people become involved and learn more?
Well, we've set up a board, and we are now going to add some community people to help us gather information. There's going to be information about this coming out in the local newspaper, and I'm sure there'll be information on your shows as well, John, to let the people know. And Suzanne is going to be interviewing people, and we're going to be talking with people in the community. And there's information that that you can always reach us and the people that's there, and you can get in touch with me at yhaskins3060@windstream.net and leave an email, and we'll try to follow up.
Suzanne, would you want to provide an email for?
Sure. Yeah, you can call the easier than an email. Just call the Taylor County School Board at any time.
Okay.
I'm right there in the main office. I'm
Okay.
Suzanne Grubesic. I'm happy to talk about it with anybody.
Very good. Now, if anyone has information or artifacts that might be of interest from historical matters, items of information, stories to be told, these are welcome, are they not? Suzanne?
Yes. Yes, they're absolutely welcome. Also, you can reach out. You can come to the board office, or you can reach out to Yvette with your artifacts or your stories.
And if they're personal items, copies will be made or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, we'll protect them. And if there's something people want back, of course, we're not going to seize them and take them. But if they would like to donate them, certainly. And we have oral histories that have already been done of many of the Black leaders of the community that Yvette and GCU have worked on. Closing comments from both of you. We'll start with you, Yvette. What you foresee, we're down to 1 minute. Take a few moments, and what you hope to achieve as an end result of this project. Yvette, then Suzanne.
Yeah, my goal to achieve with this project is to get the information out, let the history lesson that we did not get in school come forth through these exhibits and the things that we put out there for our students.
And I feel like this is just God's timing. I want to just be a vehicle that whatever is going to become of this project, I feel his hands on it, and I just am going to be utilized as I need.
My thanks to Yvette Haskins, co-chair of Greater Campbellsville United, and to Suzanne Grubesic, grant writer with the Taylor County School District. The Journey to Reconciliation is the name of the project. I want you to stay tuned to the media, local newspaper, radio, community engagement. That is what we are on in this community, a journey to reconciliation as we preserve, highlight, interpret, and preserve for all of our citizens a vital part of our history here in Taylor County. This is John Chowning for Dialogue on Public Issues. Thanking you. God bless all.